Hopefully my keyboard works.
And is that?
Version 2.0.
Love it. I love it. New and improved.
I'm hoping.
Well, I do it on my phone. It's like that.
This thing has been notoriously slow. Oh, has it?
So sometimes it gets too much.
I was saying it did. It's always slow.
I agree. I agree. It makes sense. Okay. All set? Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole. It is the Village of Northfield, Committee of the Whole meeting. It is Tuesday, August 20th. It's 5:30. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Orth,
Here.
Trustee Whitaker,
Here.
Trustee Fowler,
Here.
Trustee Mendrick. Here. Trustee Gallen,
Here.
Trustee Dungus.
Here.
Thank you. Public comment. At this point in our agenda, we open the floor to those who would like to address the village board. We ask that by our rules, you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Is there anybody present who would like to make a comment? Hearing none?
We don't have to go in order that we signed it.
No, you do not.
Good evening.
Evening.
Yeah, my name is Karen Roth. I live at 141 Hat, and we just had a conversation over there. I live in the Hat House. It was built in 1889. And when we moved in 40 years ago, okay, we moved here to this village for a purpose. We have maintained that house historically and beautifully. Hat Road, like Hat Road today, is a road that is used by the residents of this village. And I have sent you an email already, so I'm not going to go over everything, and not over my passion, my anger, a little bit of anger. I again follow the village, follow them with all the other improvements that we've done here. But I want to say that I was very displeased with the vote and the choices that were made by your 2016 board. Now, there's been many boards, there's been many presidents in this village. I'm curious as to why I, as a Hat Road resident, was never approached when my street, and I say my street, because I've lived there for 40 years, was considered an improvement street. And what would it have taken for somebody from the village board to come and knock on my door, invite me to a tea, just ask, have a town hall meeting? I did some soft surveys, because you can read my email. I put the Hat Road project on Nextdoor Neighbor, everybody knows what that is. I've gotten a lot of responses. I did not expect all the responses. I will tell you right now, 95% of the people in this village, both sides of the highway, both sides of the tracks, are not happy with the Hat Road improvement project. If I didn't tell you, it should be here today. I can send you all of the responses that I've received, and they're not happy with it. They don't think that it needs to be improved at all. I've been calling for improved lighting on this block for 20 years. I've been doing it for years, okay? I've been asking for maybe some sidewalk improvement, long time. Lampkins Road bikes, a lot of bikes on our street now. They're not happy with it. You should please do another survey. I've also been monitoring the road. There's nothing eventful about Hat Road. Yes, there are periods where things slow down. There's school buses, there's pace buses. People have to make left turns, but there's nothing eventful about it. No one is standing for long periods of time trying to move on that road. I'm asking you, and I think there are other people here, to reconsider your relationship with the Cook County and how that South Half Road should be improved. In fact, on my SWOT survey at next door neighbors, the majority of them said Sunset Ridge needs to be looked at. The street north of Willow Road needs to be addressed. But everyone responded and said, no, there's nothing wrong, with the exception we like it. We do not need a left turn lane. My other issue too is that eminent domain, which my house is going to be part of, we were never told by the village. I was told when a Cook County assessor came to my house in January, walking around my property. They had no right to do that. And I said, what are you doing here? Oh, we're going to take some of your property for this half road improvement. I said, the village never told me that. I went through everything, the websites, everything. Nothing on there said that, and eminent domain was a part of their improvement. This is a hard job that you're doing right now. I agree with you. I just recently retired. I've sat on many boards, school boards, college boards. You have a hard job to do, but I think you need to start listening to today's villagers. You need to start asking us what we think we need. I feel like I'm fighting for the soul and integrity of Northfield. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Roth. Any comment about the meeting in September 10th? So can I just make one quick comment? So you can stay there. No, just addressing you and the others in the audience.
The microphone, that post is not turned.
Okay, thank you, Don. Patrick, the village manager, and I have arranged to have a special meeting of the board September 10th at 6 p.m. And it'll be widely publicized, but the intent is to create a forum where we can answer these questions. So thank you very much for your comments.
You're welcome. My comments are on the same topic, so I don't know.
Okay, please approach and state your name, please, for the record.
Can you make sure that green light's on and move it closer to you, because we were losing some of our house.
Oh, perfect, thanks.
I have a teacher's voice, that's
Since we have people dialing in, we want to make sure everyone can hear.
My name is Alicia Bellar, I also live on Cap Road. My issue with this Cap Road improvement is I'm really wondering about the vision for Northfield that's been considered here. I grew up in Northfield until I was 15, I came back about 10 years ago to put my daughter into the school district. One of the reasons I really like being on Half Road, which is a residential road, partially commercial, yes, but there are residences on Half Road. And the walkability, the ability for her to walk from my home to the municipal dance, to the library, to the Starbucks, to the grocery store. That was very appealing to me because she could have an experience that was similar to mine growing up back in the 60s. Widening the road and putting a roundabout, to me, feels like it will really divide the town more than it already has been and turn Northfield into a grid of busy roads with too much traffic, too much asphalt, too few trees, and not at all true to what Northfield's community feel and personality has been for decades. So I think perhaps the baby's getting thrown out with the bathwater here with shiny objects of roundabouts and other attractive things that might be fitting elsewhere, but to me it doesn't feel fitting for Northfield. And I also worry for my property values when my home is sitting closer to what will now be a busy road. And it's just to me not what I bought into, and not what I bought into. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Bellar. Anybody else?
And I think we should mention to the people who just walked into the room that the village board and president have worked with the village manager, and we will have a town hall meeting on September 10th at 6 o'clock here in the council chambers.
Don?
Good evening, Don Graff, Northfield resident since 1981. The 1535 Pink Flamingo Boulevard. Hello? All right. Hey, I wish to express cheers and congratulations to Pam Papadopoulos. Her heartfelt bravery and fortitude in her fight to save her long-standing business from the encroachment projected by the current traffic circle plan is awe-inspiring. Now they're not gonna like me so much. On further review, I'm totally in favor of a downtown Northfield roundabout. Having spoken to several experts and doing my own research, I've seen the light. Roundabouts are the wave of the future. There's so many positive attributes to creating and implementing modern traffic circles, and our village has a perfect location. Now, many roundabouts have several similarities. They're near expressways and usually linked to them. At least one of the streets connected to the circle is considered a thoroughfare. Now, a roundabout here will no doubt lessen traffic congestion and work wonderfully on Willow Road. I said Willow Road? Yes, it's a thoroughfare, a main artery that not only links directly to Eden's Highway, but also connects Palatine Expressway to 294 and I-53. Here's a simple solution. Want a roundabout? Place it a couple hundred feet north of the current one that we're working on. Case closed. Now this way no one loses precious parking spots or frontage property. The current intersection stays the same. And most importantly, as I said in my recent roundabout rant, this new traffic will do no harm. But wait, there's more. Who wrote this? All right, now village officials may say, but wait, we've started phase 2 of the current project. We've already signed on contracts. We can't stop now. To which I reply, what, you don't remember projects like the Alaska Bridge to Nowhere, or even closer, Waukegan's Ghost Highway, the Amstutz Expressway? Hey, there's another bonus to moving the roundabout north of its present location. Willow Road is controlled by the Illinois Department of Transportation. Hamp Road is controlled by the Cook County Highway Department. Now, any complaints that you receive in Northfield with that traffic circle, you can simply say, hey, it's the county or the state. You can wash some hands here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me close with this. There are times when we must grab the bull by the tail and face the situation. The current roundabout plan simply hurts too many businesses, too many residents. I believe when the upcoming referendum votes are counted, when the people have spoken, the current plan will be deeply unpopular to a large amount of Northfield residents. So please, let's move onward, and in the case of the traffic circle, upward by a couple hundred feet. Viva la Northfield. Any comments?
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. What crowd, what crowd?
Anyone else?
Okay, I need to follow that gentleman. My name is Gina Fisher, and I reside at 610 Greenfield. So I've already said that. Okay, I'm here tonight to express my concerns about the roundabout. I'm here to express my concerns about the roundabout. After reviewing the minutes from previous meetings, I noticed an important detail that was missing, an issue that will affect the residents and the visitors to the village. It's the parking. It appears the trustees.
Gino, I'm going to just ask you if you can pull that microphone a little closer. I'm even, yeah. If you could get, that'd be great. We have people online too that are, yeah.
So it appears that the trustees were informed about the roundabout without full knowledge of the potential ramifications and financial loss to the businesses, the struggling businesses with reference to the parking. I'm not sure how many of the board of trustees were part of the original referendum.
None of them.
None of them. So you're all new, okay. So the proposed loss of parking does not seem to have been clearly communicated to the trustees at the time or the village residents. And that was clearly outlined with Pam's referendum, which I'm not sure how that member of the community, I understand the importance of making our village attractive. I've lived here many, many years. But it's crucial to consider the unintended consequences of those decisions. Reduced parking could lead to fewer customers for local businesses, which are already facing economic struggles. This isn't just a matter of inconvenience, it's a matter of economic survival for many of the businesses. Before moving forward with this project, I strongly urge that the board consider alternative solutions similar to that of what you outlined before a bicycle that can achieve both the beauty and also the goals of keeping the vital parking in Northfield. I don't believe that there has ever been a clear indication of where the parking is going to be. It's a if-come process. And I think before moving forward, you have to outline that to the businesses, in all fairness, and to the people. I think that the effects on metamorphosis are crucial, and the public, I'm not sure she'll maintain a business. And I don't know if any of the board members understand that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else that wish to speak? Hearing none.
Greg, I just want to comment. This is public comment, and I want to respect that. I have comments I want to make on this topic, but in our regular board meeting under item 6, number 5, where we're talking about actual financial things related to Tap Road. So I don't want people sitting here, and Don, you kind of implied no one's going to say anything. So I have things to say, but I'm going to say them then.
Thank you, Barnaby. Next on the agenda, approval of the minutes, July 16th of 2024. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, discussion of potential projects to fund with a $200,000 state grant for infrastructure improvements. Am I going to turn that to Lila? Thank you.
Great. Good evening, everybody. So we wanted to talk this evening about a $200,000 grant that came in from State Representative Katz Mule's office to the village. We were notified on July 25th that the village was awarded this funding for future capital improvement project. The funding request was originally initiated by a representative by the name of Jonathan Carroll to aid with the Hap Road project, but instead Representative Mule picked up this request and made sure that this funding was allocated to the village for our use on capital improvement work. It's not clear yet whether that funding is to go to the Hap Road project or potentially another capital improvement project, so we wanted to spend some time this evening talking about some potential other capital improvement projects that this funding could go toward. So we have 4 that we wanted to just discuss with the board tonight as potential ideas for this funding. One potential project is a new parking area on Church Hill Road adjacent to Clarkson Park. So this would be on the west side of Clarkson Park to accommodate 25 new parking spots. It's been recognized that there's an increased demand at Clarkson Park with many events going on there. A lot of people attending the park. There's that splash pad. And right now, on the west side of Clarkson Park, there's kind of a gravel area where many people park, but it's not terribly ordered. And so looking for maybe 25 spots for parking over there. The estimated cost of that project would be around $171,000. And the construction start would be probably either late spring or early summer of 2025. One item to note is that 5 mature old trees would likely need to be taken down as a part of that project. So that's definitely something to consider when thinking through this option. Yeah, so that's the first one. I don't know, Patrick, if there was anything further on that.
Why don't you outline all four, and then I'll conduct a kind of the.
Oh, sure.
I'll lead the discussion with the trustees, but introduce it to the public.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thanks, Lila.
Sounds good. So, yeah, I'm just presenting then the second option then, which we actually brought up at the last board meeting, is that Wagner sidewalk connection that we talked about. This is the project that would connect a sidewalk from the south driveway of Northfield Community Church to the Willow Wagner intersection. This project was the #1 project that came out of the sidewalk committee's work, and it's also one of the key ones that we heard from civilians is a really necessary sidewalk for the village right now. This construction would probably cost around $81,000, was kind of the estimated cost by our engineers. And the construction start would be in the late summer, early fall of 2025. One item of note for this is that the construction of this sidewalk would need to happen in tandem with the Northfield Community Church installing a sidewalk on their property to connect their parking lot where a lot of families are walking from the nursery school across the street to Middle Fork School and the community center over there. So those projects would have to happen at the same time. The senior pastor at Northfield Community Church is currently speaking with their board of trustees about their ability to install that sidewalk, and so we would have to kind of work with them in terms of timing for that. But those are the first two possible projects that this funding could potentially be used for.
So there are two more, and I'll jump into those just for my background with them. One is the creation of a new parking space for the business district in the IDOT property, which is if you think about going east on Willow and heading south or east, if you call it that, on the Edens, there's a small section of land there that's owned by IDOT. And the village has approached IDOT in the past about an extended lease for that property where we can install approximately 23 parking spaces. The advantage is it puts it in very close to the business district and is a new parking area for us. So the concept is, as we look at that, that currently is unfunded and unlikely to get any grant activity if we were to apply for grants. So that's why we added that into this list of potential spends for that $200,000. The other remaining piece is the Hap Road project. For the Hap Road project, as you'll hear for those of you who stay for the village board meeting, there's about $2.7 million worth of what we call enhancements to the potential Hap Road project. That's things like increased lighting, decorative or ornamental traffic signal posts, adornments around the roundabout. We've applied for funding through that for a program called ITEP. The village, depending on the item, would be responsible for about 20% of that cost if we receive that grant. So another concept is these funds could be set aside for our portion of that 20%, which is around $460,000 estimated currently. I'd like to point out for the board, you do not have to make a decision tonight. This funding, we have a 2-year window by which to dedicate or select a project. If even in 2 years the village board is still in the, well, we're not quite sure, you can apply for continuing 2-year extensions. According to the DECO, they've said that the extensions can run up to 10 years. So I'm never one for really kicking the can too much. But here's a situation where if there's not a clear consensus among the board or you want something to play out over time, you do not have to make a decision this evening. We just wanted to tee this up because the fund award notices come in, and we've got a number of potential projects to think through.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. So let me answer a question of where this money comes from. This is money that's appropriated through Springfield, and because of my relationship with Jonathan Carroll, Jonathan Carroll was able to give Northfield $200,000 when Kat Small took his position. She made the same promises. There's a process that we have to go through in actually getting the money into our account, but and we're just starting that now. As Lila explained, it started in July when we were contacted. So this is, I'm going to open it up to the board to discuss these 4 different options. So Clarkson Park, this is something that The board has been discussing, and individual trustees have been discussing with the Park District for a while, recognizing the parking situation around Clarkson Park is challenged in a dense residential area, and how do we find additional parking? 3-4 years ago, I walked with the superintendent, Park District superintendent. We walked the property and came upon an area that we thought would be right behind the band shell. That would be appropriate to have additional parking. Anybody else on the board have any comments about this? Any priorities?
Greg, I think it's a great idea, as you said, but talked about for quite some time. Where is the Park District in terms of potentially stepping up and throwing dollars at it as well? Because I saw that and I immediately said, we're a pretty good partnership, so where do you think that stands? And
I love it. So I have my notes here. It says, I'd like to see Park District participate in this. So that's one of my, so I think we have to do a little groundwork with Park District, find out, their interest, their desire for that, and whether or not they want to put up an economic stake into it. Any other comments are right on? I think I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So 2 questions. One, have we had any interaction with the homeowners there to know what their thoughts might be losing 5 trees? I know they were pretty active during the whole ban shell process, so I'm curious about that. And I'm also curious, so it's 5 trees for 23 spots for $200,000. Could we do 3 trees for 50? No, I'm being kind of serious. That, I mean, we could lower the price, get a chunk of parking, and save some trees. So could we maybe do 2/3 of that project, or would that be too small? I'm just wondering. So I also like the thought of working with the Park District, but also just on the first one. Are we talking about all items, or do you want to talk about them one at a time?
Why don't we talk about one at a time, if that's all right?
So my things are, what do the neighbors there think, and what does the board maybe think of 3/5 of the project? 3 trees and 15 spots.
I think part of that, though, Barnaby, is figuring out how many cars typically park there, parallel park, because, it has to be a net gain at the end of the day. So I think that's got to be part of the discussion. But I understand your point, but if we're just going to do 2/3 and it's the same amount of parking, why cut down any trees? Right? So
I had a question, and I was looking more at the numbers and looking at the engineering costs, and I'm going to bring up the project, even though we're not talking about it, I'm going to bring up the project by the church. I know we've talked as a board of all the infrastructure and the swales and how difficult that project is going to be. And this one at the park seems pretty clear cut. I mean, besides, no pun intended, the trees, it's working with a topography that's pretty flat. And the engineering costs were just exorbitant for the easy project and really minimal in comparison to what I would say a lot more technical projects. So, I don't know, looking at Walt Hamilton's prices are pretty crazy.
There's got to be some more to the story, in my view, about surface drainage enhancement in that area. It's already pretty wet right in that area, and I think that the engineering is addressing the fact that having additional parking, impervious surface in that area, don't want to make it worse, and connecting into the system.
Don't they have the integrated bricks in the grass?
Of course, yeah.
Where, are we on Clarkson Park now, or are we back to the?
Back to Clarkson Park.
Okay.
I just was bringing up the engineering costs between the two.
Yes.
Yeah. I got to believe there's more engineering involved than it meets our eyes, for sure.
Well, and currently that area is pitched towards the east already. When you park there and you look at where it's pitched to the east, and I know this has been something that I personally and several other trustees and the park board has been looking at doing, because, in fact, I took a picture the other night when we were at Music and Mart, and there was about 9 cars that for some reason a couple people started parking parallel. So you had 9 cars, so they all started parking parallel, and you looked at how many more vehicles were able to park there. So it calls for 25. I think the trees obviously can be also replanted on their property. I mean, it's their property. It's not the, it's not the neighbor's property that the trees are being affected. Plus, when you look at how much safer it is on the east side where they parallel park or, angle park right now, it's much safer to get in and out of there. They're also talking about being able to load and unload when there's music at the band shell, and you're also talking about being able to put a handicap parking on that side as well, which has been a huge problem because there are limited handicap spots. Plus, if you look at the pictures that were added in there, and you look at the east side parking versus where they're proposing the west side parking going to the north, it appears that there'd be room for a few more spaces going north towards Willow Road. So it might be more than 25 spaces that you'd actually be able to pick up there. So that has to be looked at as well. Because when you look at the east to the west, there's more parking spaces on the east side that go closer to Willow Road than what they're proposing in this. So I think you might be able to even get, more spaces. So that would be a huge thing. Plus, I had talked to Bill at one of the meetings that they were also talking about, like on the east side. Where
I'm
they-
sorry, who's, Bill who?
Bill from the head of the park district.
Okay, all right.
Bill Byron,
Okay,
Superintendent.
I just want
Yeah.
to make sure I know all the players, thank you.
So there's also an area on the east side, south of where the parking is now, where there's room to add additional parallel parking as well. So the end of the game here would be to get as many additional parallel or angled parking spots for Clarkson Park because of all the activities. It's becoming, a hub for the village, not only for the music and art, but for other activities, whether it's the Rib Fest or other activities that people are using space. So that's another plus. So I think that'd be a great use of that, monies for that. And I think, to Trustee Whitaker's point, I think we also need to look at the engineering, potentially get a couple other estimates from a couple other engineering firms. It seems like the Galt Hamilton pricing seems high, whether it's a sidewalk program, whether it's this program. So I would encourage us and the village manager potentially to seek out several other engineering firms and see if we can get the lowered cost. Because then potentially we could use that money for maybe 2 projects if we get the engineering lowered.
Thank you, Charlie. I know these are just estimate costs that we're coming up with here.
Right.
So it's, he may be shooting a little high, but I think he doesn't want to have a situation where he comes back with the real costs, and we've seen this before, real costs that are, much higher than what he's estimating. So he's working from kind of almost catalog pricing, gravel and aggregate, curb, and concrete, asphalt, that kind of thing. Anybody else on the Clarkson Park?
I would just add that to everyone's point here, it will be very important to understand the neighbors' appetite for this because during the planning and zoning segment of the band shell, there was much concern from the neighbors about noise, this exact parking issue that we already have. And while music and market is one of the most used times of the park, 25 parking spots is not going to solve the problem of music and market. They're parked all the way down to Wagner Road and all the way down Avon because it's a great event.
Yeah.
But we need to look, at the cost benefits of trying to do, as you said earlier, 25 spots for this amount of money. And does the neighborhood want it? Because there were certainly neighbors from 2 or 3 streets over worried about, the noise. And the trees do add some buffer to that. So we would need to communicate well, and obviously there have to be public hearings, what am I looking for?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Matthew, anything to add to that?
No, I think everyone has captured my thoughts.
Yeah, good. Let's move on to
Greg, one other thing is that area along Churchill also gets used a lot for people parking for soccer because of that crosswalk there, because the parking lot,
Yeah.
I think it's filled, so a lot of times there's people parking there. So having additional safe parking, there would also help the people that are parking. And I think we're talking safe parking here because right now it's not really safe parking.
Thank you. Wagner Road, the sidewalk extension from Willow to the Northfield Church's south driveway. I know in the next couple weeks, we have a meeting with the superintendent, District 29. It's been a great concern of mine, and I know the other trustees and village in general, of how traffic flows through that area in pickup and drop off. And before we put in a sidewalk on the village right away, I think it's best to know what their master plan is, what they're envisioning for that. It's one of my notes. And then the other, we're talking about the sidewalk extension. This is a prime candidate for an Invest in Cook, a shared grant. So rather than, I think that's something we would want to pursue. Any other comments from the trustees?
Yeah, I have a comment on this one. First of all, thank you, Lila and I guess Patrick, for putting this together and giving us this to look at and talk about. This is a great topic for us and I think for the public to see. You know, we have $200,000 here that we can maybe be really smart and nimble with and show maybe the residents some real visual progress in our village and some ability to problem solve. This is a really important, the Northfield, the nursery school there is not just visited by our residents, but people from nearby towns. That's where many of them send their kids. It could be, for many of them, their first introduction to Northfield. So I see it as a critical piece, and the reason this one little piece is so important is right now, because there's no sidewalk at all on the west side, people are crossing the street, you know, and it's some of our most vulnerable people, young moms or nannies or young parents with a stroller and with a young kid, and it's a mess. But by putting in this little stretch here, it gives the ability to cross the street at the light and get to the driveway. And once you're at the driveway, it's still dangerous, but much less so, because you've crossed that major street. And just one minor thing is, in a perfect world, you would do this stretch of sidewalk with the sidewalk that would run parallel to the driveway, but you don't have to do them both, because this piece that we're talking about already solves a part of the problem. Because once you get across the street and get to the driveway, you can at least look both ways and say, well, is it safe to go to the driveway and get around the corner to the nursery school? So it's a much better position to be in. So this little piece, I've talked to the pastor, who's a neighbor, and I think some other people from the village have talked to him too. You know, he wants to kind of turbocharge the fundraising for this piece. He's running into some issues because they put on some solar panels. Some of you might have seen them on the church, which ComEd is not yet giving them credit for. So they've got this wonderful solar situation that's not delivering any revenue to the church. But he is talking to his board about the importance of this issue. But theoretically, this piece would I think be a nice tool for him to go to his board and say, hey, listen, the village is spending this money on this important thing. We need to raise the other money. You know, I personally have told him I will contribute to this. I think it's that important. They're a not-for-profit. You can donate to the church. And I know he's also talking about pavers or some type of fundraising effort. But we don't necessarily have to do both pieces at the same time. I think we need to have a plan to do both. But I strongly recommend that we do this piece. I think it's worth the money for two reasons: for safety for the kids, but also I think to show our residents here that, you know, sometimes we just have to make a move because it's important. So I hope that coming out of this meeting, we at least can make a commitment maybe to this piece. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, just two things. Go ahead, I'm sorry,
Well,
Tracy.
I just wanted to add some comment to that, and I think it would take some input from Mallory as well. In the litigious world that we live in, if we put that sidewalk that dumps into a driveway with no connection point to anything, even if we stripe it to the grass on the adjacent side, I think we're opening ourselves up to litigation if something happens at that crosswalk. It's not exactly the same as the school because the sidewalk crosses a driveway to another sidewalk. I would just, before I suggested that this was the way to go or was asked for a final vote, which this isn't, I would want to understand if we do it as a Part A, Part B scenario, what the legal ramifications of doing such would be.
Please.
And I haven't looked into that yet to look into it, but we could. But obviously, there are areas in town where there are sidewalks that aren't the entire length of a street. So I could see if there's any heightened one because it ends at a specific business, but generally, there's just that general duty to maintain them in a safe condition. And there's that understanding of knowledge of risk when people are walking, and then if they go off the sidewalk, and then they're into a private property that would not be controlled by ours. Obviously, we can't stop anyone from doing anything, but I could certainly look into that and get further clarification. But just based on my understanding of premise liability and history with that, don't think we would be at a heightened liability concern, but I would want to look into that and confirm.
Yeah, thank you, Mallory.
Thank you.
Great point, Tracy, in that kind of sidewalk 101 is that you don't want to terminate a sidewalk into a dangerous area or to an area that vehicular traffic might not be expecting it. So I think we really have to, in my mind, well, I'd be interested in the research that Mallory does, but in my mind, to have an agreement between the village and the pastor that this is going to be done. Anybody else?
I'd like to just reiterate what Lila said, that this was a project that went to the community with the survey, it went through a committee process, so I think that's just worth repeating, that this is something that came out of a committee and the general board's interest and was done through public engagement.
Thank you. Let me just say that this has been a priority for the entire board. All of us, I think, agree that this is an important little segment, but I really believe we just got to do it right. And if there's an opportunity for Invest in Cook, a matching 50-50 grant, like we did on Bosworth, when we just got that approved, it saves us the taxpayers considerable amount. So this is something, Barnaby, I wanted you to know, this is something I passionately want to pursue as well. This is, it's something that the hard work of the Sidewalk Committee identified, and I think it will be done. It just, let's just do it right. Anybody else? All right, if you don't mind, we're going to move on to, let's please approach. There's a public comment period. There will be other public comment period at the board meeting. This is a committee of the whole meeting. It's a little bit free-ranging conversation, but in this one, I'll make an exception. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
So the only thing that just warms my heart that you guys are actually discussing parking and the concerns for parking again, like I mentioned prior. And I like the fact that you also are taking into consideration the safety of the public. But I think the consideration of the property that you have outlined to use for additional parking for the businesses of Northfield is a concern for me because of the access points.
Yep.
And I think that if you were to talk to any of the police officers or any of the engineers, it's going to be very difficult to facilitate getting people safely from the area that you've outlined to the businesses. Just bear that in mind, and also the lack of having that already outlined in some sort of drawing for the public, so that they would understand where you're proposing this.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the third option, the IDOT lease parking. I think this is a project that we've targeted now for since I've been on the board, recognizing that irrespective of whether or not the access is ideal, it's something that 23 spaces, I think, is an important addition to the parking, both for customers and for employees of our downtown businesses. And I'd love to hear what and let me just do one more thing. It's this is a particular project that is unlikely to get any kind of funding. This will all come out of the pocket of the taxpayers, and this body will have to make a decision on how we'll pay for that. Anybody else want to comment here?
I think any additional parking that we can get is critical to the downtown businesses.
Me too.
Whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, and it'll also clean up that area because frankly, there was an elderly lady that used to go over there and pull all the weeds, and she was finally told by Cook County or the state to stop doing that. But she cleaned the property up by herself, summer after summer. So right now, it looks horrible. So I think if we can get that and be parking and get, 23, 25, whatever, how many spaces we can get, it'll improve that area. It'll get additional parking, like you said, for businesses, for, employees. So I think it's critical if we can get additional parking in that area, and that potentially could help a little bit with this potential, however this roundabout ends up, or anything with the Hap Road stuff. So I think parking is always an issue in every community.
Trustee Fowler?
Yeah, it's the right thing to do, grab as much parking. And it's not perfect, we get that, but just, there are many communities that find off-street parking that is somewhat hidden, but people find it. They will find it. And I just think about Stormies, I think about Hap Inn, et cetera. Just imagine a van coming in with people. That's an extra place for a van to just kind of park and hang out there. It's easy, it's ugly right now, so if we didn't do it, I think we'd be negligent for not pursuing it personally.
Anyone else? Great. And the final choice is the Hap Road improvement project, our local share of design enhancements. What we're talking about here is ITEP funding. ITEP funding is a mechanism to share the cost through an Illinois entity that, and it's an important one we've used in the past. As Patrick pointed out, our share of 2.7 million would be 684,000. I think that applying for this is something that we're going to be considering tonight at the regular board meeting. But anybody have any comments about or?
I have thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's my personal thought of, I really don't want to have an opinion on this until after we have our town hall meeting to hear what the residents have to say. And this is their money, our money that we're talking about. And until we hear from the residents in the community, I think that really a discussion doesn't do any good right now.
Is it fair to say that there might be two other projects on here already that would be 1 and 2, and that might be 4th? I mean, because we haven't had a lot of discussion about the 4th one, but what I feel here is that everybody's on board for trying to figure out the sidewalk at Wagner. And I saw a lot of head nodding over the parking lot behind Stormies. And if we were able to give staff direction to run down specific costs related to those two projects, we would be better informed to make a decision on those two. None of that is going to happen before we have this town hall meeting anyway.
Right.
Now that it's September 10th, and since we don't have a firm deadline for using this money, it appears, it's going to take us some time to do the legwork anyway. So I'm just wondering if the board would have an appetite for giving staff direction to flesh out number 2, which is the Wagner Road sidewalk, to a greater detail. And because that's number 1, figure out what that really is going to cost us, and then perhaps we set aside the remaining balance to deal with that parking lot at a future point when we actually know that IDOT's going to let loose of that parking lot and let us do what we'd like. I'd like to throw that out for consideration. I don't know how we are on our timeline tonight. I'm happy to talk more.
No, I think that was the direction. I was hoping to give staff that exact priority.
And again, I think to parlay into what Trustee Mendrick said too is we could potentially have the ability to do 2 of these projects, especially if the Park District says, yeah, we're willing to, with the parking over at Clarkson, so.
I would agree. I mean, Clarkson Park, the right-of-way parking and the sidewalk at the church/daycare would be a much higher priority, and they could be done a lot quicker, a lot sooner. I would agree with Tracy to give the staff direction on getting better pricing on those 3, and potentially, depending on what it comes out to be, maybe 2 of those could be done, and maybe there'd be a little bit money, or like you're talking about, President Longmas, with the grants that we could get, maybe we could cut that one for the park, for the sidewalk down to half, and then monies could be used for one of those other 2 projects, or all 3.
I just wanted to clarify, I said Wagner Road and the IDOT parking. I didn't include Clarkson Park because I I do feel like we need to have a joint conversation with the Park District about this, because while it's our road and our responsibility, I think there is some potential shared responsibility for what we do there. And I just wouldn't want to get ahead of the Park District. I don't know what their plans are for anything additional at Clarkson Park or anything. I just think it warrants at least a sort of let's feel them out conversation before we spend a lot of engineering dollars and staff time there. That's my opinion, but
Well,
we
I think
can.
that's with all the projects, essentially. The Park District for the park, the church for the sidewalk, so maybe that's where we start, and wherever that goes, then give staff direction, because again, we don't want staff spinning the wheels for no reason.
I think staff is looking for direction from the board about whether, kind of where our priorities would be. And from where I sit, I think a priority would be our IDOT parking and then Wagner Road. Anybody else?
No, and IDOT could fall apart, right? And then you've got the backup with Clarkson Park. But I do think it would behoove us to have the conversation with the Park District, with the neighbors, just to get a gauge on that regardless.
Yep, I agree.
Absolutely.
So,
Agree.
And I would be happy to go door to door along Churchill to talk to the neighbors. I have friends there. I lived in that neighborhood. I go knock on doors for staff if that's what we need to do. I know there's some concern that we're not doing that sort of thing, so I'm putting a stake in the ground that I'll do that if we need it.
Thank you, Trustee Mendrick. That's a very generous offer. Appreciate it.
And I was just clarifying that I felt that the Hap Road project would be fourth on the list. However we decide one or two is great, but like Trustee Fowler said, I think it's something we really have to look at and do, and it's an important part of the community and be a great improvement for safety. But Hap Road should be the fourth thing that we look at, considering that's the farthest one out as far as when that could potentially start.
Well, I think we've given staff enough direction here, introduced all these four concepts to the public and kind of what we're thinking about and considering. I'm going to move on. Next on the agenda, update concerning the potential library expansion. Patrick?
Thank you. Last night I attended the library board meeting, and for those of you in the public that aren't familiar with this project, the village owns the building across the street where the library is housed, and we rent that to the Winnetka Northfield Public Library District. The district has determined that they need additional space, that the current facility is not meeting their needs. So what they've asked the village is there a way that they could get more space at the current facility? And if not, they may need to relocate to a new location within the village. So the village board had given me direction to start working with the library district to see what the options were for that building. And on Monday night, we went through an update after having a visioning session. And in that visioning session, what we talked about is really some members from the village, some members from the library board, talking about what visual preferences did they have if we were to do an expansion of that building. And Lila is so kindly bringing up our PowerPoint presentation here that we gave the district. So if you'd hit the next slide for me, please. So what I did is gave, thank you, an update to the visioning session to the district library board as a whole, since they only had a couple of members there. And what we did is we brought in the library's preferred architect that's helping with their interior plans. And that architect took us through this session, and what they started with is something that they call word attributes, which is really kind of opening the thinking of the group, saying, when you think about a library in town, what thoughts come to mind? What are you really interested in? And the summation of that is really the group thought a library should be welcoming, accommodating, and that the building itself should be timeless, well-lit, and airy in feeling. I know that sounds kind of airy in itself, but that truly is kind of the feelings that we wanted. And in my opinion, as they went through this, it really helped set the context for the group as they went into the next section, which was looking at visual preferences. Lila, if you would. So these are just two images. What the architect did is they presented to the group, I think it was in the neighborhood of 30 images. And they just kind of ripped through them, 30 seconds or so a piece. What's your initial take when you see this image? These two images, when you see them, are two that kind of made the finalist group of 10. that had attributes that caught people's attention. And I put them up here just to show the library board and now you a little bit of what the session did. And the comments for the image on the left were, we really like it, it's a nice appearance, we like that it looks like it fits in the neighborhood, but boy, that's an awful big roof. The image on the right was, while there's a defined entrance, which we think is important, it's at a level that we think is very accessible to the community. We like the light as far as the glass, and we really like the use of an outdoor space, if you can see it on that upper floor, for the library. And that's really was the intent of showing these images, is for the architects to take those comments in for what does this group want. For me, it was very helpful because I got to see that the village representatives and the library representatives have a shared vision for what a building in the village could look like. My concern was is if the village staff or the village group was in the, no, we want a big steel building, and the library is thinking we want something to look like a log cabin, well, the two groups would not be in agreement as we look at doing an expansion project. And what we found is that the resident representatives are all thinking generally in the same direction, and I see a good consensus with the group. So the next thing I went in is talking with the library about what next steps. If we see that we're moving in the same direction, how would we move this forward? And really that next step is starting to look at hiring an architect. And to do that, we would go through what's called an RFQ process, and it's a request for qualifications. The reason we do that is to ensure that those that offer proposals are qualified for the work they're proposing to do. The last thing we would like to do is put a big, wide-reaching, well-publicized request for proposals out, and then get a number of proposals from firms that have never, ever done a library before. And suddenly, I've got the village board in a bad situation where you've got 5 architects who have never done a library before, but they have a really good price. And the village board has to go, you know what, that's a great price. However, you've never, ever done a library before, and all you've done is jails. So we really would prefer, so we get in an argument with these architects about who's qualified, who's not, what's a good fit. So this request for qualifications process is a way to vet that out, to ensure that we only ask for proposals for people that we have determined as a group to be qualified. And the library board and the village would have representatives on that decision process. Thank you. As part of that, the village is in the position of saying, we will agree to look at this and hire the architect and see what the expansion cost is for our envelope, so long as the library agrees to build out the interior of the building. And getting to that point of who will pay for what and how we go through this process will be done through an intergovernmental agreement. So we also work through the library board potential business points for an intergovernmental agreement to move this project forward. Hiring an architect, you see that last large bullet point on schematic design, design development, construction docs, is explain to them that process of hiring the architect and then what happens after you've done that. So it was a really good conversation with the board. I heard that our discussion was well received, and bringing an update to the village board as a committee of a whole. This is where we are in the process. I hope to hear more tomorrow on direct feedback from the library board's position, and I'll bring an update to you as soon as I hear more about what their position is.
Terrific. Thank you, Patrick. Great work on this. Shout out to Trustee Gallen and Trustee Fowler for helping out. Thank you very, very much. Anybody have any questions for Patrick on this? Okay, last thing on our agenda is discussion concerning the Hap Road water main and the next steps for improvement.
I know how much people love talking about water mains, so that is probably just a great place for me to kick this off. You may recall I think it was in April, it was right before I started, the village board rejected a set of bids for a water main improvement project, and it was on kind of 3 primary areas: Mount Pleasant, Oak Tree, and Old Willow. And they're differing areas, but it was installation of new water mains and also put in some valve replacement projects. The bids came in well above the engineer's estimate and very well above what the village had budgeted for the project. So the village board made the decision, which had I been here, I would have also recommended, and that's to reject the bids. So part of the goal and the reason Mount Pleasant was included in that project is in advance of doing Hap Road, the village didn't want to put a new roadway over a bad water main. So Mount Pleasant was targeted as an area that's had some main breaks. We wanted to get that work done. So I circled back with staff to ensure that we didn't let the ball drop on that project as we get closer to Hap Road's improvements in 2026. During that conversation, I started asking about Hap Road water main. It's an 8-inch water main, and I learned it's about 90 years old. For those of you that haven't been involved in roadway construction, when you're building a new road or remodeling a road and you start a roller, big, large vibratory roller over an old water main, even if it's 6 feet underground and it's 90 years old, even if it doesn't break while they're doing the compaction of the ground, you've probably created some weak spots or some small breaks that will soon reveal themselves. And it's been in my experience, anytime I've done a large roadway project, that I've severely regretted not replacing the main before we went forward, even when it was a situation where we just didn't have the money in Kenilworth to do it. We almost always had an issue. So Mike Nystrand and I started talking about, look, we know this is a long segment, but we need to take a look at the Hap Road water main. So what we did is I released a request for proposals to engineering firms saying, what would you charge to design this water main? And that's before I ever came to the board and said, here's the situation. Because one of the things I believe in is we need to occasionally go out, and even if our regular engineer is doing projects for us routinely, I want to price check the market periodically. So we put this RFP out. We heard from 5, 6 firms who said they're interested in putting pricing together. But when they learned that my goal was to include the Hap Road water main and the Mount Pleasant water main, all the firms but one backed out and said, well, wait, you've already got Mount Pleasant designed and you're wanting this woven in with a Hap Road project, will never be price competitive. And it actually turns out they weren't, because our sole proposal was from Gewalt Hamilton, and the price came in, I don't see anybody from Gewalt here, about half of what I expected it to be for this level of design. So they're offering to do the work partially because they already have Mount Pleasant already designed, and they've already done some survey work in the area. They are, no one else could easily be competitive with that project price-wise. So it's my recommendation to the village board that you give me a consensus, that you're comfortable with me moving forward with getting the design done for the Hap Road water main. I'm not asking for permission to put this out to bid. I'm not asking for construction approval. It's merely let me get this project under design and get to the point where we get a good estimate of probable costs that we can move forward. And then when we get to that point, we'll bring it back forward before we go to bids to see if the board's comfortable moving forward. If you'd like, we can talk about that piece, and then when we're done with that, because we've got so many people assembled tonight, I like to jump in with a little bit of background about the Hap Road project itself, because we haven't talked about it much in a public meeting in some time.
Anybody have any questions for Patrick regarding the water main?
I have a question. So obviously infrastructure's number one, including public services and everything else, but keeping our infrastructure up to date. And my question is no matter what direction we go with Hap Road, this is something that needs to be addressed anyways. So I'll give you my opinion is I think we should go ahead with it, because whether Hap Road's done or Hap Road's not done, or there's alterations to the original plan, it's still going to be an issue. So we definitely should do it.
Thank you, Trustee Whitaker. Anybody else?
Is this proposed $39,000 in design service fee in our budget, out of our budget, or will it be in a budget because we're not doing something else? I just want to know if we're adding one more thing to our list of expenses that weren't in our budget.
So the $39,000 is not budgeted. It was not an anticipated project when you put the budget together, but we have room within the existing budget because other projects have not been done to be able to absorb this without asking for a budget amendment.
And Mike, Patrick's only been here like 3 weeks, so you agree with that? You can find 40 grand somewhere else and move a project around?
He will, no
Thank
matter
you.
what.
A 90-year-old water main needs to be replaced, no matter what happens with Hap Road. I think, you know, being in that business for 44 years, it's like, it has to be replaced. The last thing you need is having a fire and then having that water main break during a fire when you're trying to put out a fire on one of these streets. And typically, when you're opening and closing water mains and hydrants and all that stuff is when you get breaks. And we start doing the project, and with the road traffic, the vibration, it's bound to fail in multiple locations. So we absolutely, no matter what happens, need to address this and go forward and replace that water main for that stretch and the Mount Pleasant one.
Anybody else?
I concur.
Let's move forward with this engineering.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring next month on the board agenda, I'll bring forward a ratification of the agreement with Gewalt. So you've got that, you know, sign off, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
We've got a little time before we adjourn. Do you want to take it, or?
You went
Sure.
through history, didn't you?
Yeah.
Because we are, and by the way, this microphone's not working. People are telling me they're not hearing it, so anyway. Because our village is split by Edens, when you talk about Mount Pleasant, you kind of have to say west of the highway or east of the highway, because I live on Mount Pleasant, and for a minute there, I was like, what? And then I realized that it had to be east, so just a
West.
thought.
West.
I mean, west, just a thought.
Thank you. So I must feel, I'm just compelled to correct Trustee Mendrick. I have been here 4 months. It isn't 3 weeks.
It seems longer than that, though, doesn't it?
Some days it does. But, you know, in those 4, and hopefully you don't mind me sharing this, but Trustee Mendrick is not actively sick. This has been going on for a period of time, so.
Yes.
Matt, I saw you kind of go, when she coughed. I don't think she's contagious right now, but it's just something that just will not go away, so. But.
Thank you for that.
Don't make her laugh.
So in the 4 months I've been here, I've been learning an awful lot. And one of the things, especially as I see the group here tonight, is the Hap Road project has got a lot of interest right now. And when I came in, it was kind of in the, I'll call it the quiet period, because there wasn't a lot of active design. There wasn't a lot of work going on, but they were just getting ready to go. The Cook County is ready to engage a firm called Santa Cruz to start through the land acquisition phase. So it's one of those things that I've been starting to learn as we go through and things have popped up. And most everything had been in the background till recently. So as I'm going through our website, looking at what we've done and the outreach and how recently we've been reaching out to residents, I see room for improvement. And there's things I'm working on in the background now to get more outreach going on this project. And frankly, it's easy to understand why people are going, well, wait, what's going on? This started in 2016 with a previously constituted village board. There's a bunch of mailings and public meetings and blue ribbon committees put together to work on this project. But as far as the public perception of what's active, it's been since 2020, since this group, this previously constituted group, had a public meeting for the residents. And that's part of what's got this discussion going in the background. And thank you to many residents who have been saying, hey, we'd like to have a meeting about this for our September 10th meeting. I won't wait till September 10th to start moving some of things forward. You may have, for those of you who regularly look at our sign-in sheet, you may see that Holly changed the sign-in sheet for tonight. We're asking for people's email addresses if you would like to be part of our newsletter. I want to start working on building our database for both residents and businesses so we can start pushing information out a little bit more regularly and let you sign up for particular projects you may want to know more about. So as we go through this, there'll be a QR code that you can scan and sign up to be on the Hap Road email update list, so you'll know when there's meetings coming up ahead of time. So we're doing a lot, and my approach has been on, can we improve our website? I think we can, to get more outreach and information. Improving our outreach to residents, the database is one of those pieces. And also starting to develop a support plan for those that will be directly impacted during the construction phase. That one won't be moving quite as quickly because we're looking timeline-wise at, I can focus on the first two pieces, the website and the public outreach, before we get that support plan. But most definitely, I'll be coming forward to this group at some point in the future saying, here's a list of things we can do to help those impacted and make this a little bit more palatable as this project proceeds. As I mentioned, we're currently in the phase where they're doing land acquisition, and the designers are starting to work toward finalizing construction drawings. That process will take a while as they move forward. The current schedule is, and this is a little confusing, but let me outline that you'll often hear, or you have often heard, well, sorry, this is a county road. This truly is a county road, but the village has a seat at the table for a number of reasons, and probably foremost among those reasons is because a good relationships have been developed over the years with Cook County Department of Transportation. So the county, as they look at improving this road, has said, hey, village, here's what we're thinking about. Here's what we're thinking about doing. And the village said, you know what, there's funding out there for the federal government, but it's only able to be given to villages. So the village partnered with Cook County, and the village is the lead on the project to ensure we get surface transportation program funds, a 70% cost match from the federal government for this project. And we roll those funds out, and Cook County will pay the 30% that we would otherwise be responsible for from the improvement. So it's a great thing because it saves you as Cook County taxpayers and you as the Village of Northfield taxpayers money, but it also kind of complicates things a little bit because we've got Cook County, the village, and IDOT involved. IDOT's involved not because it's an IDOT roadway, but because the STP funds, Surface Transportation Program, are allocated through CMAP, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, by IDOT. So CMAC's got to approve, IDOT's got to approve, and IDOT actually bids the project. So all these agencies are working together, and we have to follow IDOT's standards and procedures. So all that long route by way of saying this project's likely to be bid out in September or November of 2025, meaning the project will be designed far enough along that they'll be into the bidding documents and ready to move forward with an anticipated start early in 2026 is the current project. Very shortly, the village president's going to open the floor from public comment to see if there's more comment based on these comments. But please understand, as you ask questions, as a village manager, I feel it's my obligation to be able to have answers for you. And if I can't get them tonight, to get them soon. This project, and especially with me being so new here, I don't have the answers off the tip of my tongue because I have not been here when all this moved forward. Rest assured, we're taking your questions down. We're keeping those information points together, and we'll feed those to the experts who I've got scheduled to come in for the September 10th meeting. So we'll have people from Patrick Engineering who's been doing the design work. We'll have people from the county who've been involved more and long-term through the process to be able to answer as many of your questions as we can. And ultimately, that's my goal is to make sure you understand the project, and I give this currently constituted village board the information they need to make the decisions moving forward.
Thank you, Patrick. The public comment period that Patrick referenced will be at the beginning of our regular board meeting, which is due to start at 7, unless you meant otherwise. That's what you're...
Whatever you prefer.
We do have 20 minutes here. Might have to cut things short, but I will open it to the public if anybody has any comments about what Patrick just said.
Did we reiterate September 10th at 6 p.m. is the public meeting? We have had a few new people come in. September 10th at
Thanks,
6 p.m. Mark it on your calendar now.
For the record, Carol, thank you.
All of the parties that you just delineated for word about and the airport project and particularly with the sentiment of many people in the village.
Whose idea was the roundabout?
I have no idea. No, it was actually a decision, as I understand it from what I've read, is that there was a steering committee that got put together that involved engineers, traffic experts, and they looked at their current configuration of the intersection with 5 legs and said, you know what, this is not the way we would ever design this. They had concerns over safety, pedestrian crossing, driver confusion as people are trying to merge into traffic, and they worked around a consensus of what was the best approach to that. And it's my understanding that it was a joint recommendation from that group that started us down this path of a roundabout.
Okay, well then the follow-up, thank you. Then the follow-up is because there was so much controversy over this. I mean, I'm hearing you say, and I don't remember what date, 2026, blah, 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 blah. Is,
I've got to work on my articulation if that's what I sound like. I'll try to get better.
do you guys feel that the roundabout is a done deal? Or is it still open to consideration? I feel like a lot of people would like to know. Right or wrong?
Yeah. As I sit here, I don't know, but I think that that's a great question for the September 10th meeting of how far is this, what are our options? I think is a valid question.
Okay, thank you.
Let me add something, if I could, Patrick. This committee that Patrick referenced that included engineers and others also included business owners in the village, also included our P&Z chair, our architecture chair, other citizens. It was in 2016, so it was before I was seated as a trustee. But they had quite a few meetings, and with the engineers, and they came to, that committee is aware of, they remember the meetings and when the options that were given by the engineers at the time. So that committee came to the conclusion that the roundabout was the best option.
Camera off again. So I'm listening to all of your comments about the Half Road project.
Speak in the microphone, there you go.
And Carol's question was a good one, because what will the outcome of the September 10th town hall meeting, whatever you want to call it, is there really the possibility that we could sway the board based on the surveys that we've done? Or can we negotiate part of the project? The other thing is Santa Cruz already has approached us all. We have gotten proposals. We have been told that this is how much money you're going to get because we're going to take your land regardless. And we have 60 days to make a decision. Okay? That doesn't, I'm sorry? Only 6 weeks left. There's only 6 weeks left. I feel threatened. I'm going to tell you how we feel. My husband is sitting over there. We feel threatened. We feel like we have no control over property that we've owned for 40 years in this village. So I don't know who hired or selected this Santa Cruz. I've gotten emails, I've gotten phone calls, I've gotten letters, certified that I feel I'm being harassed. You're my representative. I cannot trust that my village trustees are going to protect me as a villager in this, that where I live. I don't know if you've all lived here for 4 years. I don't even know if you live on Half Road. I don't know what your investment is, your promotional investment is on Half Road. But mine is that I do not want to be threatened by the county. And 66 weeks, thank you, 6 weeks, that's not a lot of time. So I'm coming to this, of course, this town hall meeting. Thank you very much for recommending it. But I can't make a decision about it, based on unless you make a decision. I guess that's where I'm coming from. And I'm sorry if I sound a little agitated right now, but I really am. So thank you.
Thank you.
There is, I was going to hold off, but I think we have a minute here. There's something we can all do between now and September 10th, and it's something I wish I did 3 years ago. There's a Hap Road website that has 1,200 pages of information on it. It's unstructured. It's mostly chronological. There's no executive summary, but there's a treasure trove of information on it, and I've been through 400 pages of it. I would be through more of it, but it keeps crashing at 400 pages. But let me just share a few things I've learned. And I did what any citizen would do, go on and just start going through and reading. So Thursday, 2 days from now, is the 8th anniversary of the start of this project. The first meeting was hosted by IDOT at its offices. There were 2 people from IDOT, 2 people from the county, 2 people from Northfield, and Patrick Engineering had 2 people at this first meeting. There was a steering committee set up. I believe it met 5 times. There was a sign-in sheet so you can see who showed up. And there were many more people at the first meeting than there were at the 5th meeting. There was a fall off. It's pretty clear this project was handed off very early to the contractors, the engineers. It is an engineering project, but as a former consultant who worked on business, if someone asked me to look into something, I would certainly give a proposal and a series of ideas. What was interesting, after about the 3rd meeting, there's phrasing in the minutes, and you can all read this, where it says, "A roundabout is proposed." It doesn't say by who. It doesn't say why. Now, the rationale for the roundabout, and, you know, people thought about this hard, but there were two things that were referenced. One is safety, and then there was talk about giving the village an identity, that this would be a source of identity for the village. Now, what's interesting is you look into the 1,200 pages, and that intersection where they propose the roundabout is safer than Willow Road and safer than Winnetka Road. They said there were currently 21, I think they call it conflict points, which is points where cars could encounter each other. There's 21 right now. If they do the roundabout, there's 14. So the problem is not solved, it's reduced. When you go and check this out, and again, I wish as a trustee I was given this as an assignment, day 1 in orientation, to read through this material. I strongly urge people to look at slide 240, which is a roundabout footprint. And what's interesting is it's kind of a sketch drawing. Someone sketched what a roundabout might look, and it's almost like an artist drew something that didn't necessarily take a look at what was there. And it came incredibly close to the businesses to the east. They considered 4 roundabouts, and they considered a regular traffic signal as well. And the selection that was chosen was oblong. It was the largest roundabout. It was the most expensive, and it was the one that would take the most parking. And again, this is just the facts that are presented in here. Public meetings were held. There were 2 that I've read about. 36 people went to the first meeting. 22 went to the second. Many of those people at the second meeting were the same as at the first meeting. So about 40 people came to these meetings, a village of almost 6,000 people, for a project like this. There's more people in this room now, I would say, on this topic than there were during the whole life of this project. Now, let me just, from what I've read, the village did what IDOT asked them to do, to hold meetings. They were asked to advertise a meeting. They advertised in the Daily Herald newspaper. How many people here subscribe to the Daily Herald? Okay, it doesn't serve this community. But let me just, I've spent much of my professional life going into rural areas building wind farms, multi-million-dollar projects that would forever change the feel, the look of these communities. These efforts took at least 18 months of going to the village, meeting all the landowners, meeting all the public officials, meeting after meeting after meeting, town halls, because if you're going to educate the public, they need steady information over time, over a long period of time. And that is not what happened with this project. Now, it wasn't required to happen, but we're a small village of 6,000 people. The people who live down Hap Road, If you look in the 1,200 pages, you were sent a postcard that invited you to a meeting. As Trustee Mendrick said about Clarkson Park, we're a small enough village that someone could have walked down Hap Road and knocked on all your doors and say, hey, we have a proposal. So I mention all this just to say this is why we're in the situation we're in. People have reasonable questions about a big project that could forever change the look, feel, and interaction of our downtown. So close your eyes and imagine 10 years from now this roundabout is happening out there. And maybe it's a benign thing and it's a good thing, but it could be significantly damaging to this village, not just in the short term. Now, a lot of things have happened, and I'm going to wrap this up quick, but I went through 400 pages, and I just want to share where I got to. A lot of things happened over 8 years. We had the Willow Road project, which affected our businesses. We had COVID, which affected our businesses. I've heard from some current businesses the challenge that they anticipate. And, you know, God forbid we would attract some new businesses, which I don't think we will do with a long project like this. So I see us as trustees, as doctors about to perform a surgery. And it's a significant activity. And I guess I'm guided by the idea of do no harm. And if you're going to do something risky, is it worth the reward? And I think we as a village need to grapple with that whole thing. And the reason we have to grapple with it is we haven't grappled with it before in the last 8 years. And so I don't know where this will turn out, but I feel like we need to pump the brakes, learn more, listen more, and that's where we're at. So I can't vote on more money for a project that might not be good for the village. Now, we're going to get into that in the next meeting, but I really strongly urge, because I think we'll have a much better conversation, for people to go to that website and do the work. And some of your questions will be answered, but I venture to say more questions will be activated by doing that.
Barnaby, thank you for that. I will say you can't prove an unknown. You can't prove an unknown. And I'm going to wait until September 10th to hear from the engineers, to hear from Cook County on this. I spent a lot of time with Pam last Friday. There is not a chance I'm walking from Stormies over to UW. That road is way too fast. And when you put that roundabout in, it comes single lane each direction. I want to learn more, but I want to connect our downtown, not keep it separated, because you got two sides of that downtown. And I'm not sure they can address the roundabout, but I know, Charlie, you are a big advocate of safety. I think the whole board is. We got a mid-block crossing up on Hap. I think that's a positive right across from the park. I think everybody wants that. This creates a safe corridor for people. We've got the Skokie Valley Trail coming in, so we're gonna have more people coming to our downtown. So let's be more open. Yes, the communication may have been better, but I don't think we should go into this negatively, I guess is my point. And I think Northfield, I've seen multiple downtowns, and I'm already talked to President Lugman, so I want to talk to Patrick. They've gone through I've seen downtown Highland Park go through, in my lifetime, 2 renovations, Wilmette 2 renovations, Winnetka 2 renovations. I want to talk to their Chamber of Commerce. How do we support the businesses during this? My concern isn't what the end product is. The end product's gonna be the end product. My concern is for Pam, for all the businesses during construction. What can the board do during that time? Excuse me?
Because of the construction, not during the construction.
No, during the construction, because, okay, well, as I said, you can't prove an unknown. And any enhancement I have seen in any of the villages around us has actually been a positive.
Just hold on.
I don't know the known. That's what I said. I don't know. You can't prove the unknown.
Okay. All right. Everybody, hold on. Hold on. We're not doing this like this. We got a meeting in September. It's on the books. So we're going to have to continue this conversation. Sorry, we're not going to have any more public comment right now. We've got a board meeting that starts in 4 minutes. Barnaby, I'm going to cut you off. I know you can talk on September 10th or 11th. Trustee Fowler, thanks for that. Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We will be in a regular board meeting in 5 minutes. You'll have an opportunity to speak. Can we get a second? Yes. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We'll